We'd been driving for 8.5 hours across this barren, abyssal plain, and I felt incredibly guilty because all of the effort had gone into finding nothing. And something changed in the far distance, but the image got slightly darker, and then as we got closer, there was little bits of seaweed which have washed down from the shallows, but they were floating just above the seafloor in a really weird way. And then the lights from the ROV cast down, and you could see the bow wave from the ROV propagating out across the brine pool.
Anything that goes in there doesn't move.
Scientists discovered lakes at the bottom of the Red Sea. Lakes sitting on the ocean floor, over a mile underwater, filled with poison that kills anything within seconds. Life is thriving inside them. Life that shouldn't exist. Life that's rewriting everything we thought we knew about survival. These death pools are preserving thousand-year-old tsunamis in their mud. They're teaching us how to find aliens on distant moons. They're producing molecules that might cure cancer. The team almost missed them entirely. They had 5 minutes of battery left after 10 hours of searching. Then their camera lights caught something in the darkness. This is what scientists just found beneath the Red Sea.
A brine pool is an accumulation of very salty water at the bottom of the ocean. And the water is so salty, or we'd call it saline, that it sits as a pool beneath the seawater.
In 2020, ocean explorers were scanning the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. They sent down a submarine camera to search the seafloor at 1,770 meters depth. That's over a mile straight down. They found a lake sitting at the bottom of the ocean. Water underneath water. The water in this underwater lake is so incredibly salty and so heavy that it doesn't mix with the ocean above. It sits in a bowl on the seafloor, like a separate body of water, with its own surface and shoreline. When the submarine got close, its movements created waves on the surface of this lake. Actual rippling waves spreading across the water. You're already a mile underwater in the ocean, and there's another lake with waves beneath you. The main pool stretches 260 meters long and 70 meters wide, roughly 3 football fields. When they measured its depth, they found this underwater lake was 6 meters deep. A lake sitting at the bottom of an ocean that's already over 1,700 meters deep. They found 3 smaller pools nearby, each less than 10 square meters. Little pockets of this ultra-salty water sitting in cracks and low spots on the seafloor.
Quite recently, a brine pool was found not at the spreading axis of the Red Sea, where there's a lot of volcanic activity, but slightly off it in shallower water. And that gave an indication that maybe they exist in other environments. They'd certainly never been found outside the Red Sea in the Gulf of Aqaba, and they've certainly never been found on the coast, which is where we found it.
Nobody had ever found pools like this in this part of the Red Sea before. Scientists knew about similar underwater lakes way out in the middle of the ocean, where underwater volcanoes create them. But this one was just 1.2 miles from the Saudi Arabian coast. Previous discoveries were all at least 15 miles offshore. Finding one this close to land means these lakes can form in places nobody expected. There could be more, hiding in unexplored areas. They almost missed it completely. The team was seconds from surfacing, after 10 hours of finding nothing. The submarine battery was dying. If they'd given up 5 minutes earlier, this underwater lake would still be undiscovered. They named these the NEOM Brine Pools, after the Saudi company that funded the expedition. This discovery completely changed what scientists knew about where these death lakes exist. Anything that goes into this lake doesn't move. Ever again. This water is 8 to 10 times saltier than the ocean around it. The regular Red Sea has about 3.5% salt. This lake sits at 26 to 32% salt. Almost 10 times saltier. Imagine the saltiest water you've ever tasted at the beach. Then multiply that by 3. Your mouth would burn. Your throat would seize up. You'd gag immediately. Salt isn't even the worst part. There's 0 oxygen in this water. None. If you need oxygen to breathe, which every fish and most sea creatures do, you have seconds before you suffocate. It's loaded with toxic chemicals. Hydrogen sulfide that smells like rotten eggs and kills in high concentrations. Methane gas bubbling up from below. Heavy metals dissolved at concentrations that poison anything from normal seawater. This lake is poison soup, sitting at the bottom of the Red Sea. When a fish accidentally swims across the boundary, the shock hits like an electric jolt. Its gills stop working. Its muscles seize up. It can't orient itself, can't swim, can't breathe. It just stops. Then it sinks through the dense, syrupy water, deeper into the toxic lake, and dies. The lake preserves the bodies. They don't rot like in normal water. The extreme salt and toxic chemicals pickle everything that dies. Bodies sit there perfectly preserved, slowly getting buried by drifting sediment. The predators know about this lake. They figured out exactly what it does, and they're using it. Massive swarms of shrimp camp on the rocks around this death pool, just watching and waiting. When an unlucky fish swims into the poison and starts dying, the shrimp rush in. They don't wait for the fish to sink to the bottom. They swoop in while it's still floating on the surface, stunned and dying, and snatch it before it disappears. They're using the lake as a weapon. They don't hunt or chase. They wait for the lake to do the killing, then swoop in for easy meals. Sharks swim lazy circles around the edges, big ones patrolling the perimeter. Eels slide down to the surface, grab stunned fish, then dart back to oxygenated water. They've learned they can't stay long, so they make quick strikes and retreat. Deep-sea fish that normally avoid each other gather around these pools because it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. The lake keeps serving up dead and dying prey. Predators just show up and take what they want. These predators turn this death trap into their personal hunting ground. The lake kills everything that enters it, except it doesn't. Life is thriving in there, living in poison that would kill you in seconds, conditions that kill fish instantly. Thriving communities cover the edges of these death pools. Around the lake edges, where the poison meets normal seawater, orange and gray stains coat the rocks. They look like mineral deposits or sediment. They're alive. Millions of microscopic organisms forming beaches around this underwater death lake. These organisms don't just survive extreme salt, zero oxygen, and toxic chemicals. They need it. Put them in normal ocean water with normal salt and oxygen, and they die. They're so adapted to extreme conditions that normal conditions kill them, just as the poison kills regular fish. There are organisms on this planet that would die if you gave them oxygen. Oxygen that we need to survive would poison them. They evolved to breathe completely different chemicals. They eat sulfur compounds and methane gas. They process heavy metals that would kill us. Their entire biology is built around conditions that shouldn't support life. Scientists pulled samples from these communities and analyzed them. These organisms have completely different ways of getting energy and staying alive, compared to almost anything else on Earth. They use chemistry we barely understand to survive in environments we thought impossible for life. Some are bacteria that strip sulfur atoms from molecules in the water and use the released chemical energy. The efficiency is staggering. They created the lowest sulfate levels ever recorded in the Red Sea, sucking sulfate out faster than it can be replenished. The communities are layered. At the edge where poison meets normal seawater, where conditions aren't quite as extreme, you get one set of organisms. Go deeper into the poison, where salt maxes out and oxygen completely disappears, different organisms take over. Each species carved its own space in this gradient of death. Getting samples was terrifying. The team had to lower their submarine camera and water sampling equipment at the same time, both dangling from cables nearly 1.5 miles long to the exact same spot. Both pieces hanging on separate cables, swaying in the current, descending through darkness. If those cables tangled, everything was lost. Millions of dollars of equipment sinking, plus all their data, plus their only way of collecting samples. The whole expedition could end catastrophically if the cables touched. They did something never done before. They landed the submarine directly on the Brine Lake's surface. Because the lake is so dense and heavy, the submarine sat on top like a boat on water. A submarine sitting on a lake at the bottom of the ocean. They lowered the sampling bottle inch by inch, using the camera to guide it. They had to hit the exact right depth at the boundary layer to capture poison without contaminating it with regular seawater. One wrong move ruined the sample. When the bottle snapped shut with poison inside, the whole team erupted. They successfully collected water from an underwater lake using a technique never attempted with this precision. What they found in those samples rewrote the rules for what counts as life. These organisms aren't just surviving, they're thriving, dominating their environment. They're proof that life doesn't need the conditions we thought it needed. These death lakes have another secret. They're recording history perfectly, without error or gaps. Scientists drilled into the mud at the lake bottom and pulled up over 10 feet of sediment. When they analyzed it, layer by layer, they realized every single layer was perfectly preserved, untouched, and undisturbed. Each layer sat exactly where it fell, maintaining perfect chronological order. One layer had coarse sand and gravel from an underwater landslide, when part of the seafloor gave way and tumbled into the lake. Another had fine dust and silt washed in from flash floods in the Saudi desert, when rare rainstorms created temporary rivers carrying material to the sea. There was even a layer with charcoal from fires burning on land, ash washing into the ocean and settling into this lake. All of it sits in perfect order, telling a story going back over 1,200 years. 12 centuries of history preserved in mud. One layer stood out immediately. It was a jumbled mess, a chaotic mix of different materials scrambled together. Scientists recognized this matched the signature of a massive underwater avalanche from about 500 years ago. A huge section of the underwater slope gave way, probably triggered by an earthquake, and crashed down. When that much material moves that fast underwater, it displaces enormous amounts of water and creates waves. Big waves. Scientists think this underwater landslide probably generated a significant tsunami that hit the coasts of both Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Old stories from the region, folklore passed through generations, talk about a massive wave striking the coast centuries ago. Until now, nobody knew if those stories were real or just legends. This sediment layer is proof. It happened. The wave was real. Why is everything so perfectly preserved? In normal ocean environments, this wouldn't be possible. Animals destroy the record. Worms burrow through mud constantly, eating organic material and mixing layers. Crabs dig burrows. Sea cucumbers vacuum up sediment. Fish root around for food. All this biological mixing churns the seafloor constantly, like shuffling a deck of cards. The original order gets lost, but in the poison lake, nothing survives to disturb it. No worms, no crabs, no fish. Sediment settles and stays exactly where it lands, layer after layer building up over centuries, each maintaining perfect chronological order. It's a recorder, running uninterrupted for over 1,000 years, capturing every major event affecting the region. These NEOM lakes are special for another reason. They're only 1.2 miles from shore. Previous discoveries were at least 15 miles offshore in deep water, isolated from the coast. But these pools are positioned perfectly to catch everything coming off the land. When flash floods tear through the desert and dump sediment into the sea, it goes straight into these lakes. When earthquakes trigger landslides, debris falls right in. When tsunamis wash over the coast and pull material back to the ocean, these lakes capture it. They're natural sediment traps at the base of the coastal slope. Scientists can read climate patterns from these cores. They identify drought periods by looking at years with little sediment washing from land. They spot major storms by layer thickness. They identify earthquakes by disrupted, jumbled layers from underwater landslides. They even track changes in ocean temperature and chemistry by analyzing organism types preserved in different layers. It's a geological recorder running uninterrupted for over a millennium, capturing every flood, earthquake, tsunami, and climate shift. Few places on Earth offer such complete, undisturbed records. Most ocean floor sediment cores are full of gaps and mixed layers. These are pristine. A time capsule at the bottom of the Red Sea waiting to be read. These lakes show us how oceans are born. The Red Sea is still opening up right now. The African continent is slowly pulling away from the Arabian Peninsula, creating this long, narrow sea between them. It's a baby ocean. In another 100 million years, it'll be as wide as the Atlantic. The Atlantic Ocean went through this exact process 100 million years ago. It started as a narrow crack between continents, just like the Red Sea. But we couldn't watch it happen. We only see evidence left in rocks. With the Red Sea, we see it in action. We're watching an ocean being born in real time. These poison pools are part of that birth. As the seafloor cracks and spreads apart, it exposes ancient salt deposits buried in rock. Those deposits dissolve. Super salty water seeps up through seafloor cracks, collects in low spots, and sits there, creating underwater death lakes that preserve everything falling into them. This same process happened in the early Atlantic and in every ocean that ever formed on Earth. We're seeing a window into ancient Earth, into the formation of the very oceans we depend on today. To create these environments, you need heat from deep underground. You need the planet's crust cracking open, moving, and breaking apart. You need the ground itself to be in motion. As far as we know, Earth might be the only rocky planet in our solar system that still has this happening. Mars had it once, but it shut down billions of years ago. Venus might have had it, but not anymore. Mercury's too small. The Moon never had it. If Earth is rare in having these conditions, then maybe the environments that create and support life are rare too. But there might be places like this somewhere else. Jupiter has a moon called Europa, one of the most promising places to look for life in our solar system. Europa is covered in thick ice. But underneath that ice, detected by spacecraft flying past, is an ocean. A massive ocean of liquid water. That ocean is probably very salty and completely devoid of oxygen. Europa's ocean is basically a giant version of these poison pools in the Red Sea. If there's life in that ocean, and many scientists think there could be, it would survive in the same impossible conditions. Zero oxygen, extreme salt, high pressure, toxic chemicals. It would be just like the organisms thriving in the NEOM pools. Saturn has a moon called Enceladus. It's smaller than Europa, but just as interesting. The Cassini spacecraft, before being deliberately crashed into Saturn to end its mission, detected something remarkable. Geysers. Plumes of water vapor shooting hundreds of miles into space from cracks in the moon's icy surface. That water comes from somewhere, from an ocean beneath the ice. Analysis of those plumes showed organic molecules, the building blocks of life. That ocean on Enceladus is probably salty, probably has no oxygen, and probably has chemicals toxic to us. If life exists there, it would be just like these microbes in the Red Sea. Studying these death lakes in the Red Sea teaches us what to look for when searching for aliens. It teaches us what signatures to hunt for, what chemistry might support life, and what extreme conditions might actually be home to living organisms. If life survives in these toxic underwater lakes on Earth, if it thrives in poison at the ocean bottom with zero oxygen and salt levels that kill anything we thought could live, then maybe it survives in the frozen oceans of distant moons. The organisms living in these poison lakes might save your life one day. Researchers have already pulled molecules from these microbes that kill cancer cells. These medicines work through completely different mechanisms because they come from organisms with completely different survival strategies. These microbes fight each other for survival in the most extreme environment on Earth. They compete for limited resources in these toxic pools. In that competition, they produce chemical weapons. Compounds designed to kill or disable neighbors so they get more space, more food, more of whatever scarce resources exist. Sometimes those chemical weapons work on human cancer cells. Compounds that evolve to kill competing bacteria in a poison pool can kill cancer cells in a lab dish and potentially in a human body. They found 12 different unique proteins from organisms in these Red Sea death lakes. 12 proteins that do things no other known proteins can do. They work in extreme conditions like extreme heat, extreme salt, and extreme acidity. They maintain their structure and function in environments where normal proteins break down and stop working. One of these proteins can capture carbon dioxide in super hot, super salty conditions. Power plants generate carbon dioxide in their exhaust. That exhaust is hot and often salty from seawater cooling systems. Normal proteins can't work in those conditions. But a protein from a poison pool organism thrives there. Other proteins show promise for fighting bacteria that resist antibiotics, the kind of infections that evolved resistance to every antibiotic we have. The infections that kill people because we ran out of drugs that work. Microbes in these death lakes have fought each other for millions of years, evolving new weapons and new defenses in an endless arms race. Some weapons might work against bacteria currently winning the war against our antibiotics. These organisms use ways of getting energy that we've never seen before. They process chemicals in ways we didn't know were possible. Every new method discovered is a potential target for new drugs. Every new protein is a potential treatment for diseases we can't cure. Every time they discover a new poison pool, they find new organisms. Different pools have different chemistry, temperature, salt levels, and toxic compounds. Each variation creates a slightly different environment, selecting for slightly different adaptations. Each pool is like its own laboratory, where evolution produces organisms with unique capabilities. The Red Sea has at least 25 of these pools that we know of. That's 25 different evolutionary laboratories, 25 different collections of organisms, producing countless unique compounds. They've barely begun exploring what's there. Every new pool discovered is like opening a new pharmacy. Except this pharmacy has been developing medicines for millions of years in the harshest conditions on Earth. Evolution already did the research and development. Scientists just figure out what these organisms produce and how to use it. Uses in industry are equally promising. Proteins that function in extreme heat can be used in industrial processes operating at high temperatures. Cleaning products that work in very salty or very harsh chemical conditions. Fuels produced using organisms that tolerate the harsh chemicals involved in fuel production. Materials processing requiring proteins stable in acidic or toxic environments. The microbes in these death lakes aren't just surviving. They're producing compounds that could revolutionize medicine and industry. The Red Sea has more of these death lakes than anywhere else in the world. At least 25 confirmed. Each one is different, with different depth, size, chemistry, organisms, and secrets. The Mediterranean has poison pools. The Gulf of Mexico has them. But the Red Sea has the most. The Red Sea is where the newest, strangest discoveries keep happening. They nearly missed the NEOM pools. They were seconds from giving up. The battery was dying after 10 hours of searching. Everyone was exhausted and frustrated. When exploring the unknown, every second counts. You never know what's around the next corner. What seems like failure might be 5 minutes from the discovery of a lifetime. Most of the deep Red Sea has never been explored properly or thoroughly. The ocean there is deep, over 2,000 meters in many places. The seafloor has basins, valleys, and low spots where these lakes could be hiding, but you can't see them from the surface. You have to go down there and search. Searching the deep ocean is slow, expensive, and dangerous. Every new lake found could have organisms never seen before, medicines we desperately need, forgotten history, and answers about life on other planets. We've mapped more of the moon's surface than our own ocean floor. We've sent machines to Mars, but huge sections of the Red Sea remain unexplored. These alien worlds aren't in space. They're right here, right now, sitting at the ocean bottom. Underwater lakes where nothing should survive, but life thrives anyway. Death pools preserving history for centuries. Organisms that might cure cancer growing in toxic poison. Time capsules recording tsunamis from 500 years ago. Somewhere down there are more lakes, more secrets, and more impossible life. The most mind-blowing discoveries don't require going to space. Sometimes they just require someone willing to keep searching for 5 more minutes when everyone else wants to give up. At the bottom of the Red Sea, in darkness where no light reaches, there are lakes full of poison that kill everything instantly. Somehow, they're also full of life. Life that rewrites what we thought possible. Life that might teach us how to find aliens. Life that might save millions of people. All of it hiding in underwater lakes that almost nobody knew existed until 5 minutes before they were about to give up.